I had a tripod at work.
So we're here. I'm chatting with Paul Levy, the owner of Advanced Audio Rentals, and Advanced Audio Rentals. I mean, you supply racks of gear for the movie industry, and tell me a little bit about what you do.
Well, I started in this industry, I don't know, probably 25 years ago in New York, working at various studios in Manhattan, and that's where I graduated from school. I moved out here in the early 80s and started working as an engineer in some of the hot music studios back then, Sunset Sound, Cherokee Studios. I worked for Rusk Studios, and then I worked for a guitar player, Steve Vai, for 3 or 4 years. And while I was working for Steve, I helped him build a studio at a house he had bought in the Hollywood Hills. And we had started collecting gear for the studio, and it was just sitting there, not being used. So I came up with the great idea of renting the stuff out in the meantime, and that kind of got me into the whole rental world kind of by accident, and I've been doing it pretty much ever since. As far as the whole post-production world goes, about 15 years ago or so, I kind of started moving away from the music recording and the music studios because, as everyone well knows, the record companies and the budgets pretty much vanished over the next several years, and I felt I had a much better opportunity in post-production where there's deadlines and there are movies with budgets, and when they have to get something out, then they spend to bring in more gear, more engineers, musicians, and things spread out into different stages as their deadline approaches, and that's when they spend money. But I think my expertise of doing this all those years, since the days of analog and then multi-track open-reel digital machines, now to Pro Tools and Pro Tools HD, I have a lot of experience and background from just doing it for many years, which kind of enabled me to come up with a lot of really innovative ways of improving, audio quality and ease of use, like with hard drives and data management and things like that. And that's one of the things that brought me to Antelope Audio.
Because you use some of the best converters out there. I mean, and they're oftentimes modified, and you really take an audiophile approach, it seems.
Pretty much, yeah. And that was kind of the one thing that really impressed me about the Antelope stuff, especially the high-end, the Trinity and the 10M reference box. What I do is I sit there with analyzers. I have an analog audio analyzer, and I have a digital analyzer I analyze clock signals with. And, when you talk to a client, you can't really tell them, hey, this sounds great, or this is the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, you have to have technical reasons. You're a technical support provider, so you've got to have technical data and good reasons why you're recommending to somebody to spend money to rent an extra 10 or 20, 50,000 worth of gear over what they normally would. And once I was able to get the analyzers on all of my audio converters, using the Antelope gear, and I saw the distortion and the noise floor basically just drop. I mean, you remember, you were in my shop when I did that. I knew immediately that would translate into better sonics, lower noise and distortion on a scoring stage or in a dubbing stage, where you're going through like scoring, music mix, editing, laybacks, then they hand it to the dub stage, then they're mixing 400 or 500 tracks worth of elements, and these multiple generations of recording really depend on having like the ultimately low noise floor, as low as it can possibly be, because it accumulates as you go through the post-production process.
So I do remember you showing me the tests, and I remember coming into your place, and I also remember hearing all these stories that we probably really need to start doing a better job documenting. But your guys would go out on these scoring gigs, and the reactions. Tell me a little bit about the reactions from the engineers.
Well, some of the guys, Sean Murphy being one of them, because he was the first one to hear this thing, working on an actual scoring session. They sometimes, and this has happened more than once, like the monitor pot on the console will be open. I mean, because sometimes you'll need to hear guys who are on the stage tapping mics, testing mics, so you've got the monitors up in the control room so you can make sure everything's working before a gig starts. And a couple times they've just left the monitor up, and it was so quiet Sean, the engineer, and the director of the movie at that time, I think it was that Disney movie, Planet Earth. I think they were doing. Everybody stopped in the room. What the heck's that? I mean, they had no idea the monitor control was left up because the noise floor, the noise coming out of the converters was so quiet, nobody could hear a thing, and they just were totally surprised.
And I mean, you guys were even telling me they were listening to some of the cues watching the show, and they could tell which ones were 10M and which ones were.
Well, I have a funny story for you, and I know you haven't heard this one. At Fox Studios, like the technical guy who runs the stage, and this was actually the same place Avatar was scored and mixed. And he was kind of a holdout. He likes the Brainstorm box because it's really versatile and it's inexpensive and it's pretty good for what it cost. And he didn't really see the benefit of using such high-end stuff and jumping through extra hoops to distribute clock the way that I've been doing it. And he had to listen to a backup he made on an Otari radar a recorder because they run one of those behind the Pro Tools. If the Pro Tools of the Mac takes a dump, they have to have something running with its own converters and in its own little world to run as a backup device. So he had to import some stuff back into Pro Tools, and he put the machine up, and he heard it in the monitors and thought something was wrong with the Otari, and realized after a few minutes, he was like, wait a minute, he's like, there's nothing wrong with my machine, and he realized for the past couple of months, what he'd been hearing out of the monitors the whole time was like 5 generations better than what he was getting before. But he just got used to the sound and didn't know until he brought up a different machine with its own converters, not clocking off the Antelope stuff. He went, oh my God, it sounds like somebody just switched to a radio. I mean, in comparison to what he got used to hearing from the main Pro Tools.